So that's good. And whenever you're ready, Tim, to do a fade in or fade away or whatever it is you want to do there.
All right, hold on 1 second. All right, we have faded into live. So I have not turned my video on yet, but I can.
Excellent. So we are live,
There
and
are
we'll just
people
take this
here.
in. There are people here, and as my wife says, I should have changed my shirt because this is all about fashion, as we know. And I didn't even do my hair, so I'm going to make sure that that looks okay. Anyways, welcome to Thursday Night Social. For any of you who might be just tuning in for the first time or watching this after the fact, we just kind of like to say again, welcome. Thursday Night Social is all about tech talk and the economy. We take a look at what's going on in the world of blockchain and really talk about how to develop economies that will better serve humanity over time. Our conversations go all over the place, and for going further back, how this came to be, Tim and I are developing a piece of software. It's called Udicci. We've been working on it for many years. We had a social media studio back in Rochester, New York, where we tried to do a lot of community development around the same idea, economic development. And we're just kind of continuing that now as we finally have the tools that seem to be the answer to some of the problems that we were looking at, like how do you truly make a difference in an economy which is so far removed from the individuals, and how do we help literally truly help people instead of just dealing with some sort of the bureaucracies that we deal with. So anyways, tonight we have Bruce Carver with us, author of The Divine Economic Theory, and we're going to be talking about his theories there, but also he has a new book out, and that takes a look at a practical implementation of the divine economic theory. And we'll have a few other people that might be joining us. And of course, like always, Tim is on. And okay, and it looks like Nick just showed up, and he showed up into the general chat panel. Why are they going to the general chat panel? All right,
You
so I
probably
am
sent
going
the wrong invite.
so I am going to give, I'm going to get Nick over here and turn it over to Tim for just a moment while I am doing this.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, like Chuck said, we've been working on this. We had a social media studio over at a place called the Hungerford Building, and it it was really a lot of fun what we did over there. But it was really a lot of good work that we did with the video development, and we understand what studio production means and the value of bringing knowledge to the community, and for us to be working in the blockchain and trying to learn as much as we can and trying to consume just as much as we can, so that as we're out there participating in blockchain development, we're actually doing it with a full understanding of what it really means, and maybe taking it to the depths that we can take it. So Chuck, looks like you got Nick straightened around, so you want to do an introduction there?
Phil. Good idea with some Phil. All right, so to get the night started, what I guess I'd like to do is just do a quick 1-minute introduction. So, Bruce and Nick, if you wouldn't mind just kind of getting ready to think about what it is that how you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of go on from there. So why don't we begin with Bruce? Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about yourself? Like, how did you get into economics? What's your background in it? How did you decide to go down this divine economic theory world? Just kind of share a little bit about yourself.
So are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
We are.
Oh, all right. So anyways, I kind of stumbled upon it. I was studying a different subject. I was studying international forestry and horticulture at Auburn University, and I met a professor who was looking for a graduate student, and he encouraged me to study economics for that same because of where my interest was. Well, it turns out that Auburn University had been selected, had been chosen as the the new home for the world center of Austrian economics by establishing the Ludwig von Mises Institute there. And that happened 2 years before I got there. And there were professors in the economics department who were Austrian, of the Austrian persuasion. And anyway, so my first professor was an Austrian economist and introduced me to it, and I fell in love with it. And it's a different perspective on economics. It's classical liberalism, basically, which is what built Western civilization. And anyway, so I've been an avid fan and reader of Austrian economics for many years, because that was in 1985. And I did some teaching over the years, but mostly it was mostly just personal research. And then in 2004, I had a dream, and an image appeared in the dream. And because I was classical liberal, because I was trained in Austrian economics, technically trained in Austrian economics, I took that image and I developed it. And that's what the divine economy model is, and the theory is from all the literature of classical liberalism and Austrian economics that builds into that model that basically is implemented in the model. So that's where I started. It took me 7 years to write the four core books, and then it took me another 7 years to get them published, and then the next year after that was trying to learn how to market them, and that was 2 years ago. And now I've kind of figured out where I'm going with my marketing. I've kind of dropped everything else as far all the other techniques, and so that's what I'm doing. And one of the things I learned when I was doing marketing is like I went through ClickFunnels with Russell Brunson and a lot of the guys in cutting edge in marketing. And one of the techniques that's kind of universal across them is to have something free to give people. And so this past October, I decided I wanted to simplify the theory by giving people just the model. And then, at the end of the book, of this new book that's free, it tells them how to go to the theory if they want to get more information. But the model covers macroeconomics, microeconomics, ethical economics, and economic justice. So it's a complete, comprehensive economic model. There's nothing else like that out there. So and the other thing that's unique about it, I mean, it recognizes that humans are subjective, but the other thing is it also recognizes that humans are spiritual, and that's completely different from economics that's out there. So it's a pretty thrilling theory and model.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. I am, I like to call myself a hobbyist economics, and really all that boils down to is that I love the YouTube videos which put Friedrich Hayek versus John Maynard Keynes in the boxing ring,
Yeah.
and and that's it. And what it comes down to, it's interesting. I was in banking for many, many years, and I always say that I sold myself on what I was selling, and that's one of the most dangerous things that you can do. And you're sitting here thinking like, hey, debt is really not that big of a deal, and it's like, no, it actually is. And so when I started really getting deeper into economics, like I say, as a hobby, because it really isn't. I mean, it is an interest for me, not obviously to the depth that it is for you, but more in the practical sense, like how could we go about creating a better economic system? And ours was within the confines, and sort of we were reliant on technology as far as that goes. But as I started looking at exactly as you're talking about the classical liberalism and really, studying, and the Austrian economic model does sort of say, hey, you've got to work, but we can certainly recognize the value of each human in this economy. Whereas I feel like the other models that I've read about really are more just about production, and I guess inflated gain is probably the best way I can say it. I don't know if that's accurate, but all right. So Nick, welcome to your first Thursday night social. We are thinking somebody else may be joining us, but yeah. So what brings you by tonight?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so my name is Nick. As of right now, I'm a realtor in Denver, Colorado. So that is, I guess, what I do full time. Obviously, I study the real estate markets to that regard. I'd say the whole reason that I'm actually here tonight, though, is because I would say as of last year, I started seeing the shift in the market as far as like what was going to be available and like basically how financing was going to change. Like I already kind of saw it happening. I just knew with the whole influx of everybody trying to buy at the same time, obviously we're going to start seeing the shortage of supply. So as of lately, I've been working on the Ethereum blockchain and developing a way that would create basically ERC20 cryptocurrency tokens that would have equal value share in a house. And that way we would be able to, I guess, basically decentralize the finance system in a way where we could finance houses through hundreds of thousands of people while still being able to keep track of it efficiently.
You know, Nick, last night, so I'm in the midst of reading a book called Token Economics, and in part of it last night, it spoke to the idea of fractional real property, which is exactly what it is that we're talking about now. And what struck me about it was the idea of actually having our real property be able to be more liquid as currency. But then, of course, you're sort of risking, if we put it directly against real estate and how far that we can go through that. But I think the liquidity aspect of real property is something very, very interesting. And one of the things I do want to talk about tonight is capital structure, which is something specific in this new book that Bruce put out. And what I think we're going to find is, when I read Bruce's work, I sit here and I have to read 4 or 5 sentences, go back, digest it, because it's very obvious that you are, Bruce, you know what you're talking about, and like I say, I'm at best a YouTube hobbyist, but it's solid, right? The information style, the structure style, you can tell it's all there. So as I'm sitting here looking at the blockchain ideas and creating economies, literally in my head for the and Bruce, maybe you could correct me here, but it seems like to me, maybe for the first time in human history, economies are now able to be built by the people without. Okay, yeah, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so I was explaining to you, I've been following this pretty closely since December of last year when I really started getting into the coding to understand the dynamics of it. And again, Bruce, you may know something about this, but there's one strategy I saw that was the token bonding curve, which basically created the price of the token as the supply of the token entered the market, which I'm pretty sure is something that they do with like fiat currencies, right? Again, I don't know for sure, but then even down to the aspect of like creating these markets on our own, we have like protocols like Uniswap, which are automatic market makers, which again, the coding is already back to determine like we can maintain the price at this as long as people are willing to buy this X token to make sure that the pools equal out. So it's like so many people are making so much money out there, but to me, it's even more down to the aspect of like when somebody passes away, this could be better than a will. You know for sure they own 25% of the house. There isn't a question because they have this much of it.
Absolutely. And so let me bring Bruce in real quick. Bruce, how familiar are you with blockchain and some of these ideas that we're talking about here, where like literally building economies?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm nearly as familiar as you are. I understand that it is enables individuals to be owners without without interference from outside forces. Um, and I guess I don't. I own some bitcoins,
Yeah.
and I know that the uh, the blockchain it has a lot of um, capabilities beyond just as a being part of a monetary structure, a system. Um, but I would say that I'm not very knowledgeable along what the lines that you're talking about. I'm hearing what you're
Sure.
saying, I'm understanding what you're saying, but I can't really contribute to that too much.
If I could add to that, Bruce. So I will say, yeah, with the blockchain, it sounds to me, after again looking deeper into it, they make it seem like it's so much more complicated than what it is, because again, all the blockchain is basically the same way when you look on your bank account on your phone and you see a number dictated on your phone that your bank account says you have. That's blockchain, and essentially, because all we're looking at is different stored values. The real value, I guess, the benefit of all of it is the fact that you can't delete it, right? You can't just go back and change it and say like, oh, now I own this much, because of the way the system works. But at the end of the day, if I could express to anybody, blockchain technology is just really a better way of keeping transaction records. And that's how other chains are able to get started, because all we're talking about is immutable databases that will not be deleted, that basically say, yeah, this person has this much because this person sent them this much.
And let me actually jump off from there and kind of bring this into reading your book here. Yeah, blockchain is really nothing more than a database. If we allow it to be that simple, I mean, the easiest visual that I've heard of understanding what a blockchain is simply to imagine an Excel spreadsheet, and you've got your columns and your rows, and there's just like obviously millions upon millions of rows, and these rows are nothing more than transactions which are secured via cryptography. The only
Yep.
difference being is that the columns themselves can have variable data inside of it, if you will. So it doesn't mean that everything in column A has a first name. A column A could have very many different things. So not going too far down that part. What I find very interesting, though, is blockchain is really built upon sort of the sum of knowledge. And when I get into your economic theories and really how much they do put value and emphasis upon human knowledge and the sharing of that knowledge, um,
Right.
then you can actually create what we're going to call fungible and non-fungible, but you can actually create tokens that both represent real property and tokens which simply recommend or act as a currency for exchange.
Yep.
So it's a very, very interesting bottom line thing. It's a system of shared and secured knowledge that you're able to assign currency transaction values to.
Yep. Exactly.
Well,
So
the from Ludwig von Mises talks about the regression theorem of money, and basically what that says is that uh, ultimately value. I mean, a currency has to have an original commodity value, and
yeah,
blockchain to me fits that bill because I mean, like. Uh, the digital currency. Some digital currencies I think fit that bill and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure. And I think the reason it has that capacity is because of blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure how that all is going to uh, go forward, because it seems like there's a lot of different attempts to create things from the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
But the blockchain is, I think, the commodity that that is at the foundation of the value of a currency. So the economy, it needs a medium of exchange, and we want one that's not messed with, that's not counterfeited, and so that's the value of the blockchain, it's kind of independent of outside forces, but at the same time it has this other element that has to be requirement that has to be met, and that is that it has to serve as a commodity. And
Right.
so the origin of that whatever digital currency it is, that's somehow tied to blockchain, that has to be have the characteristics of a commodity for it to actually be able to function as a money.
I agree. Yeah.
So, all right, Nick, expand on your understanding of what Bruce just said, and then I want to try to connect a couple dots here.
Sure, absolutely. And I love that you said that, because again, with what I'm trying to do, particularly as far as associating the value of the tokens that I'm going to be putting essentially just onto the blockchain so people can sell it onto any other market, is the value is coming from the fact that it's backed by a house. And I'm going to make sure that as a realtor, I do handle all the legality structures that make sure that the client, the token client, basically is actually the owner of the house. So to me, that's where the functionality comes in. Now, and I think what you also might be discussing, and quite frankly, it's just like really great marketing, is like Dogecoin, right? Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe so many people got into cryptocurrency over Dogecoin. And the reality of it is Dogecoin doesn't really have any value. There isn't any real stored action transaction value to Dogecoin versus Bitcoin. The value is the fact that Bitcoin has been around for so long. The transaction history is so solid that there isn't a question of whether or not you own this Bitcoin. And Ethereum, what's up?
I was going to say, so let's just jump out for a second there. Because I think that there's some fun conversation around here, but I want to, Tim, you've been awful quiet, and just wanted to get your thoughts. Any thoughts so far?
No, I'm just following along. So keep going.
Yeah. So, all right. So one of the things I would want to kind of jump off and have a little bit of fun with is the idea of, more specifically, what is a commodity, and how could we get into defining that a little bit more? Because I think if I were to just offer what I would say is a point of clarity, Bruce brought in that an economy needs an intermediary for exchange. And actually, that is what blockchain is. That's what blockchain was created to do, is to remove the necessity of an intermediary of exchange, because it actually creates peer-to-peer exchange. So the actual peer-to-peer aspect, if you will, gets rid of that third party, but it does allow for that exchange. So the blockchain is, yes, it is a technology. And it is the database, as we're saying. But it is the intermediary exchange, and then the values start getting created by exactly what we're talking about, these tokens. And the tokens can have an associated value to a real property, like we're saying with real estate. Or now let's go to Doge. And I've had this conversation with a few people, and myself, as somebody who appreciates marketing and branding, what I recognize is that the real value of Doge is that the market responded to it. And it's a very interesting thing, because so often we want to say, hey, let's return to the gold standard because there's actual value behind that thing. And we sort of ignore the value of awareness and engagement, both of which are extraordinarily important in marketing. Yep. I mean, thoughts on that, Bruce?
Well, I didn't say intermediary of exchange. I said medium of exchange.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not. There might be a little bit of a difference between those, and so I guess a lot of times, if you just kind of look at the way economies developed, it's basically something that allows people to have indirect exchange and trust.
Yep.
And so that's what ends up causing a medium of exchange to appear within a society or whatever. And we don't know what the society that we're living in what it really is right now and where it's going. I mean, and so it's hard to predict that, but I do think that it's very possible that something with the foundation of the blockchain could be, and another aspect of the Austrian view on medium exchanges, they're competing. So there's not just one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
we have this bimetal thing of gold and silver, but there's always the potential of there being numerous mediums of exchange for different size of asset or whatever. But I guess I don't really know enough about the blockchain and its ability to not be counterfeited.
I did want to add one thing as well there too, just as far as the real value to Ethereum and to why I'm actually interested in programming it so much more lately is the fact that Ethereum, again, it's not just the cryptocurrencies. It is a whole, basically, computer system that can actually read codes. So to me, that means it's like we can fix supply chains. We can make it so that we know for a fact this person actually did get this part at this time because they scanned it in and that uploaded to the blockchain. Or we can apply it to titles on houses. So again, like let's say somebody came to fix your house. They could scan the barcode. It'll be like, okay, we charged this much money. It got done on this day. This is what was done. And then as a realtor, I again can come through, scan said barcode, and pull up all the information and let everybody know exactly what it is. So it's like all these things that I felt are very easy information to have, but also very hard information to find.
So Nick, let's kind of jump. What's interesting, and I think to kind of bring together what Bruce was just talking about. So Bruce, if we were to look at the, blockchain is really just a name which describes I'll call it a peer-to-peer computing method. And then when you get into a Bitcoin and Ethereum or Cardano or the hundreds of others systems that are out there, those would probably be those competing models which you're speaking of.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And
So,
even how much you pay to use those different systems determines what kind of competition rates you're going to be seeing.
And a fun piece to this too, Bruce, which is kind of fun. You mentioned that you sort of have to have that trusted medium. Mm-hmm. And in blockchain, they actually refer to it as trustless. In other words, you don't have to have any trust because it's cryptographically driven, and the ledgers themselves are all facilitated and confirmed and moderated and secured by consensus of just a group of nodes and computers around the world that are all ensuring that the proper information is properly written, and then are continuously there's mechanisms in it to ensure that what was written to a blockchain remains properly in there and was not able to be changed. And in fact, if something tries to get changed, it can then be sort of removed from the blockchain, and the blockchain can sort of self-heal. So it's a very interesting idea because I get the idea of having to have trusted mediaries, but when you get to a concept where technology can eliminate the need for trust, then we sort of get to the point where when we're building, we get to build on the trust between humans and not these distant, removed mediums of exchange, which is interesting. But what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to get into one of the foundation components. I'd like to read just quickly here a couple paragraphs out of Bruce's newest book, and this is about capital structure. And there's some really interesting things here, and I'd like to kind of talk about what do you when you say capital structure, what do you mean by that? Because in blockchain world, we would be speaking of that as a fungible token. And just to make that, when I say a fungible token, what I mean is that every single token is worth exactly the same amount. So it'd just be like a fiat single dollar bill. as much as $100 bills would also be worth one $100 bill. So it's like the tokens themselves. Like I think that that's sort of the foundational aspect of capital structure, and then of course you can create different contracts which may come to that. But I kind of want to read this, if you don't mind, and just kind of jump off our conversation to get a little bit more focused on capital structure. So, capital structure, it says it contains and conveys the knowledge that all things in this world are subject to the law of time. And that is something I'd really like to understand, that specific thing. It says capital is the means of stretching production beyond the present. It is necessary and foundational. Most significantly of all factors in the economy, capital is the most limiting. See if you understand why. Ponder. In the here and now, in the present, we cannot live in the future. That is our limitation. The reason capital is the most limiting is because it's what connects the present and the future in the economy within our limitations. It's constrained by uncertainty, yet its variation or structure determines the transformation that takes place in an economy. Since capital is the most limiting factor, the movement or advancement of civilization depends heavily upon the structure of capital. These necessitate optimally that the capital structure needs to be a harmonious expression of the market so that it truthfully reflects the will of the people.
Interesting.
There is so much just in those couple paragraphs. I hope you can kind of understand why I might have to read 3 sentences and think about what's being said there. But Bruce, let me just kind of start breaking some of this down. What do you mean that capital or capital structure conveys the knowledge that all things are subject to the law of time? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Oh, read that again. Real quick. What you just said. I was kind of phased out there.
I'm going to read this. It says the fourth element. I'm jumping into it. Capital structure is also foundational. It contains and conveys the knowledge that all things in this world are subject to the law of time. I begin to grasp it, but one of the things that you're saying here, it seems to be, is that capital is the thing which helps us to bridge gaps or bridge across time itself. Am I hearing you correctly in that?
Well, capital goods are goods for the future. So when if there's no capital available, then basically it's a subsistent economy. As soon as capital becomes available, then the future opens up, and depending on how much capital there is available, then that gives those who want to use capital opportunities to expand into time. Now but the thing about capital is it's heterogeneous. In other words, it could expand a day, it could expand a week, it could expand 10 years, depending on first how much is available, and so if there's plentiful capital, then there could be several of those going on. If there's only a small amount of capital, probably it's going to restrict the type of products that can be explored. It might be one that you if capital is limited, you can only produce something that's going to come onto the market soon, a year from now. And if it's plentiful, then there might be some people who are producing goods that can come into the market a year from now, and then there might be someone who are producing goods that can come into the market 10 years from now. Yeah. So it's the capital structure then is a reflection of the loanable funds that are available to the capitalists and to the entrepreneurs. and that's what it mirrors uh, what people want, because the source of that capital is loanable funds. In contrast to the way the world is working now, where people think that credit is capital. So credit is created, and so it fools people. It gives the impression that it's capital, but it's really not an expression of how people value time, and what things they're looking for in the future. And so it basically that market then is distorted. So it still has the structure. The structure is there, but what in the Austrian business cycle describes is that structure is probably incorrect, and so as a result there will be malinvestment, overconsumption, and then there will be distortions, boom and busts, as a result of that capital structure not accurately reflecting what people want, because it's not built on the loanable funds that they've voluntarily put into the system.
Mm.
Okay, there's a lot to bite off and think about there. Do we just lose everybody?
I'm still here.
I'm here.
Okay, we just kind of had a change. Okay, so there's a lot to bite off in what you just said there, Bruce, and it's a very interesting piece, and I kind of want to give a little bit of a background in the project that Tim and I are working on. We have something called Community Commerce, and it's really an entrepreneurial mentorship program. And part of what it is that we've tried to build into this is that you would have a payment, sort of a pre-commission, if you will, or a commission draw for entrepreneurs. And even if they know nothing, the idea was to have a mentorship program, so that we could align people more closely with not only their skills, but more so their desires and where their true passions are, in order to help develop the entrepreneurial spirit, which I think is which we're not even going to get into tonight, but the idea of an economic model, and I'm gonna, for anybody who listens, like, get Bruce's book, that the entire economic model more or less floats in a universe of entrepreneurism. I think it's pretty fantastic. But one of the things that I think through, and this will be kind of a fun one for you, Nick, to kind of jump in, because you get the idea that we could literally just go create, we'll call it currency, which maybe perhaps should not be called capital, but close enough. I mean, we could just go create currencies tonight and begin loaning it. Now, those currencies technically have value, but no value, and people always want to really go, well, great, you gave me a 1,000 Doge.2s, which are useless, or Doge, whatever. Let's just give it a new name. I created 1 trillion new coins tonight, and you gave me 1,000 of them. They're worthless. But I'm going to be saying, no, that's an advance on your commission. So in talking and hearing what Bruce is talking about, that we're actually taking these loanable funds, because if you will, the pre-capitalist in this sense, so the person driving the growth, which is what I think we're seeing in the blockchain, they're starting to invest before they're even asking others to invest, but they're giving something that they perceive as valuable, that maybe even the rest of the market doesn't understand the value of. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so again, there's just so much to be said there. I want to relate back to what Bruce was talking about, because it did bring something to mind to me. And for whatever it's worth, I remember I was in Texas and I was talking with this gentleman. He's like, I want you to understand, there's rich, and then there's wealthy, and then there's old money. And he's like, old money is just like, there's nothing you can ever do to get rid of it. Like, it's just set forever. And I think that's alone, it will create some waste, but it creates a lot of opportunities for them to, again, just expand onto it. So I'll just say that quick point out there. And then to add to the cryptocurrency side to all of it. So what we saw back in 2017, especially on the Ethereum blockchain, what's called the ICO phase, where companies were basically doing just that. They were saying, we want to fund this project. We need this much money. We're going to create this many tokens to fund this project. And if it actually works, then we're going to be putting more money back into the token, or we'll start limiting how many tokens are available, or we'll start purchasing the token back at this rate. So, that was a huge part. And again, that's like a huge part of even to what I'm trying to do is just, there's so many opportunities that are actually really being taken from new homeowners here in Colorado, just because the market is just so crazy for them. So it's you can't even buy a new home, but that's not really fair if you've worked so hard to get to that point where you were right there, but then you just continually get bought out by cash buyers. So what I was hoping to do is maybe, section off a certain point of the homes that we do buy with cryptocurrency to say that we're only going to accept FHA loans. But now that I've heard you say that, it does make me think, would I be destroying my market by limiting it to saying that, oh, we're only going to accept this kind of loan here? And yeah, it may uplift my capital culturally, but overall, I'm definitely limiting how much real money is coming in. So that was just my thought on it.
So that's actually an interesting side of it too, and that starts to go down the private society conversation that some are talking about in the cryptocurrency world. And I'm going to bounce this back to you, Bruce. Again, still talking about the capital structure idea, but so one of the conversations that you start to hear on occasion on the fringes in the cryptocurrency world are these idea of private societies, or I think, Nick, we had a better name the other day when we talked. I don't know. I right now I found another name. I'm going to call them decentralized communitarians.
Okay.
Because it's almost like a governance model that actually shares resources. But these resources could be homes, exactly like Nick is talking about. It could be your grass cutter. We mentioned that. It could be your garden. It could be literally anything a family might have on their homestead. But as opposed to it being just in one location, these private societies could exist literally across the globe, anywhere that they were legally welcomed. And effectively, then you have these sort of micro economies inside other economies. So you're creating, multiple, just more and more trade points, if you will.
Yes.
And, like I look at like a Wyoming right now, and they're just making all these laws, which are saying, come set up your society here. But so coming back to this idea, though, of that society here now. So Bruce, that society comes up and says, all right, we're going to come in and, we could put all this real property in here, but what we're going to begin with is a bunch of really good ideas. And since capital is about investing into what could be produced over time, but we don't necessarily have real property behind this new currency that we're creating, but we just created 1 trillion of these currencies. How do people begin to value that new currency in the same way, if it's even possible, in the same way they would, value the currency that they currently trade in every day now and pay their electric bills with, right? So we now have these two currencies, one which would have some real honest, both of which could have honest, true value, but we're so new to this concept of creating currencies with societies with resources and value behind them. So how do we help people understand sort of that capital isn't exactly the money in hand?
Okay, so here's the other part of capital structure that I didn't mention, and it's kind of a hidden driving part, and that is the reason capital is so highly valued is because that's what transforms. That has the power of transformation, and so it's sought after. It's so highly sought after because that's what transforms. We want to make things better. So to do that, you need capital. Okay, so and I think that's kind of explains the driving or the inspiration and the innovation that leads to the cryptocurrencies, because they're trying to work their way outside of the system that's bogging it down, that's clamping down, it's preventing transformation. So you're talking about private societies. I mean, they're trying to transform in the right way, of something that's more desirable than what they're in right now. So they understand transformation. They're driven by transformation, and then they're trying to find ways. And so economics is a study of the means to attain the ends chosen. So if you're trying to transform, then you're studying the different means that enable you to do that. So cryptocurrency is kind of one of the means that's doing that. And it's, I think, because it's working towards this transformation, it basically is working towards this, finding a capital structure that will support this. Now the other aspect of that, though, is order. So they're transfer, and what is required for the order to take place. So transformation, we're shooting for that, but we don't want it to be chaotic. I mean, there has to be something substantial with it, and like order. And what the order part is, where that comes from, is the market. So, which is also interesting for like cryptocurrencies, because that market is very, very alive and changing all the time. But that's a reflection of trying to the market and the capital structure are kind of bouncing around together to bring about transformation and order. So I mean, it's very volatile, and it's alive, and it's hard to, you can't really predict anything there, but those are the forces that are going on. And again, if you look at the model, another aspect of this that we're talking about, and I think Nick was talking about the fact that the person who has this token, it's theirs, and it's inviolable. It's their property. So property rights are a function of that too. And for that to Nick also mentioned that he would take the extra steps. I mean, the necessary steps to ensure that by the proper means, which is like law. So it has this foundation. So all these things are functioning, and they're dynamic, and they're going on. We can't put our mind around it all. We see it, and it's very real, and it's exciting. And then then you mix in this idea that who's driving all this? Who's driving this? Refining the property rights. Who's driving? Finding a better capital structure. Who's driving? The formation of markets that bring about order. Well, it's the entrepreneurs that are doing that. But the thing is, they are risk bearers. There's no guarantee. They take action. They try to solve these problems, but they're taking risks at the same time. So that's all part of that whole scenario.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the property rights thing, I think, is very interesting in that, again, I'm going to fall back to Wyoming, that Wyoming is literally just changing their state constitutions to enshrine the right of personal property rights to that the state of Wyoming will defend the individual against the United States of America, even if that if somehow the United States of America comes against the personal property rights. And I think that's a very intriguing point. This whole idea of the absolute necessity of the personal property rights and protecting those. And I feel like one of the things that it's going to come out of this is some sort, and you talk not about this per se, Bruce, but I sort of, this crossed my mind. Um, that the entrepreneur is always aware of the environment and seeking to figure out how to sort of secure the environment for others around them. And in this case, it does seem like there's going to be incredible entrepreneurial opportunity on helping people to understand that they
Yeah.
need to protect their personal property rights.
Right.
That's
That
a
is
whole
true.
That's something that I haven't put a lot of thought to, because I think we live in a society that we generally assume, like, I own my house, and no, you don't really. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Uh,
and one of the things I like to talk about is like when Shearson Lehman went under in 2008, and you had all of these people who had their trading, whatever, their accounts over at Shearson Lehman, and all these people who had their accounts there and had stocks in those and whatever they were trading of the day, and they truly thought that that was their personal property, but it wasn't. They were
mhm.
actually just held in custodial accounts. And ultimately, through bankruptcy court, those people become general creditors, which are the last to get paid for many of the assets that get left, right?
Mhm.
And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, look, we have to understand that that is the type of legal finagling that's happened through Wall Street. It's and a real problem, because the individual people no longer are protected, but the institutions are.
Yeah.
Right. And
And that's
I'll
one of
just
the
say,
that's one of the things that's so attractive about the cryptocurrencies. People feel like they can get out of that system.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely. I agree with you that that's a big part of it. One of the things I would really like to explore, we're not going to have time tonight because we do try to keep right to this hour time frame, but I would really like to explore. I mean, in part because, as you're saying in the divine economic theory, you recognize not only the human contribution, which is vitally important, and I think that one of the um, things that so many economic models sort of argue over, which is the value of human, contribution. And if we just boil it all down to labor, now we're back to the state. But we can't do that because because we do have a spirit, or we do have a soul, or there is some sort of recognition of a higher moral compass that exists inside of each human being. Whether we want to follow that moral compass is a whole nother conversation. And there are some people say there is no such thing as a soul, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think generally speaking, people recognize that there is some sort of higher or greater thing that exists within the human. And I think it's very interesting that you've approached the economy with that in mind. And I was wondering, like, if you could kind of just share why that's important to hold on to as we consider economic models.
The economy is an institution that is just as divine as humans, and it's what makes them function socially. It's a gift in that regard. So it has the same kind of characteristics as we do. So the idea that we're striving for transformation as individuals, that's reflected in the economy. The fact that we cherish owning something, whether no matter what it is, if it's a glass of water, that's reflected also in the economy, and we exchange with people. Ideas or items, that's this market thing. We are basically, the economy is an expression of us. So we can't take us out of it. It's impossible. And the thing is, none of us are the same. We're all unique. So you can't make you can't think of the economy as something rigid and clear and static and not expressive. So, like, for instance, Austrian economics and classical liberalism, they respect that humans are subjective. So That's what we are. We're subjective. We make decisions based on who we are, what we've experienced. So that's what's reflecting. That's what we reflect, and the economy is a reflection of that. So anything that doesn't allow all that to happen, imposes some system where it doesn't allow that. It can't be scientific. They can claim it to be scientific, and they say, well, this is the scientific method. Well, it's not the method if it doesn't acknowledge that humans are subjective. And then, so I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm going to jump over to Nick here and maybe kind of let him close us out here. But, one of the things that I hear that is vital, and I want the world to hear, is that self-agency is vital to health, right? It's that really understanding that we do have to sort of take control of ourselves, because that's about the only thing we can truly control, and we barely can control that very well. And when we really start to value our self-agency, I think exactly as you're saying, we get to bring then our greatest value and begin to exchange it. And when we begin our to exchange our greatest self-agent model with others, then we get community agency, which is just multiplied and strong.
Yeah.
And and I want to jump back. One thing you talked about earlier is just a little bit about how, strict governance and everything else. And I do think that what we're going to come into is what I'll call dynamic entrepreneurial governance, which is where we don't have to have absolute rules. We did a talk a while back on the oh shoot, now I'm forgetting what the there was a law that was passed in 1995 or so, which basically created the Uniform Code of Commercial Justice, which basically the UCC outlined. Here's all of the general, how we're going to process commercial transactions so that we could make it easier across the state. Well, the problem is once you begin to define commercial transactions, you begin instantly to kind of restrict your personal agency into those transactions. Yep. So we have to be able to actually put the rule making closer to the transaction and allow those rules to exist on smaller scale and let those people figure out, hey, did this work or did it not work? And then let those fold into larger economies as they go. But so Nick, I'll allow you got a few minutes here, Nick, and we're going to let you kind of
absolutely
share a couple thoughts.
It's interesting that we're talking about this because I'm a yoga instructor too, and today I was the final part of my chakra series, and obviously the last chakra being the crown chakra. But like I was telling my class today, I was like, it's interesting that you work so hard to align all these chakras to get to this last one to accept that nothing's actually in your control. But we work hard to align the chakras because it's the right thing to do. It makes you feel better, and it means that you're walking in the path that is good. Therefore, the universe has a better chance of just taking care of you because you are just in it like that. So, again, it's you can't just be like, oh yeah, I trust everything. Everything's good. And again, real estate's the same way. So many people would just sign dotted lines. They don't even look.
Right.
And so many people just take advantage. And so many things can be changed, especially within title, which is just so nuts to me. So that's all.
No, actually, I think that's kind of perfect, and I'd sum it up by saying, get your house in order, right? Get your house in order because it's the best thing that you can do, and again, it's not even easy to get your own house in order, so get yourself in order, not because the universe owes you anything, but it's because the way that you can then better interact with the others in the universe, and I think through that is what we're talking about. Is we begin to see the emergence of true divine economy, which is where our best self is given to one another, and we're not necessarily pursuing a trade for the sake of capital as much as we are pursuing trade for the sake of mutual gain.
Right. In the weirdest way, since I did.
Right. And I think I think transformation is gain, Bruce.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was saying, since I started teaching this and actually implementing it into my life, it's been insane, the different changes. And obviously even just the fact that I'm talking with you gentlemen tonight, which again, thank you for having me because wow. but this is what I mean. It's just like I did do a lot to get to this point, yes, but now it is a certain point where the divine does take over, and this is where we all meet.
Absolutely. So I do appreciate you both coming on tonight. Tim was kind of quiet, so maybe actually we'll let Tim finish this off. But would you guys be open to coming back on and talking again?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm learning a lot, so I'm glad to come back.
Oh, excellent. So yeah, what I'll begin doing is, and it really is, we keep this very, so again, we were expecting somebody else, they didn't show up. What we try to do is just kind of balance it through the week and figure out what topics seem relevant, and hey, you're free to talk, you're free to listen, join us, don't, but we do definitely try to make sure that we have at least 2 or 3 different new people joining us. And there's Tim. We've got Tim on the video, and again, so thank you guys very much tonight. And Tim, we'll let you kind of close it out from here.
Well, the divine, I think in my mind, the biggest thing that comes out from all of this is the power of peer-to-peer, and being able to turn it open to an open economy where we're able to really exercise that peer-to-peer a little bit more strongly. I think that that's where blockchain comes strong, and I think that that's what we're going to start seeing a lot more of. So, but yeah, I've been quiet, but I've been here listening. So,
all right, gentlemen. Well, again, thank you very much, and we're just going to do our little out for the night. And again, so we do this every week, and I'll definitely. I'll keep inviting you, and then, specifically, hey, could you join us for the conversation, which maybe, frequently, and if you're available, because these are exactly the types of conversations I want to have more of. I want to take those who are informed. I can't remember who told us about, I think it was last week, somebody told us about some conversations that happened with, what's his name, Lick Friedman or whatever, and Vitalik from Ethereum, and they were talking about some different... Was it Eddie? Yeah. Who he shared some, it was like, hey, check out these videos. And, when you start to have people, and I'll just quickly sum this up. Vitalik, who is one of the founders of Ethereum, he's very much of the mindset that, we're better to learn heuristically, whereas let's say at Cardano, they say, we're better to learn from academic review and, so you go from there. So there's just these different ideas that come together, and I don't think any one of them is the answer, but I think all of them being shared is what's going to make us all stronger. And I do hope to, like Bruce, I'm going to probably reach out to you independent of this. I actually want to look into creating some sort of a collaborative coin around the divine economic theory, and I don't know what even that means or looks like, but I would love to kind of put together some sort of a project on the blockchain that is sort of around your teaching, and the people could sort of earn these coins if they participate. I don't know.